Initially, whenever I was working the ASP, I started out working down the wire, so I was working the magazines directly with ammunition. However, I started passing out again, so they was like, oh, it's not a very good idea for you to be working with ammo and explosives if you're passing out. You don't want to get hurt or hurt anyone else. So they sent me up to topside and I started working in the building. Well, one day I was in the platoon commander's office trying to help him out with something, and I was standing there just talking to him, and all of a sudden I fainted. Well, the back of my head hit one of the desks in the office, and it hit it so hard that it actually slid the desk a couple of inches. So my platoon commander and one of the other staff NCOs saw this, and they saw that I didn't move whenever I passed out, so they knew that it was real and that I was not just faking it. And from that point on, the Marines believed that I really did have a problem. Now the tough part was convincing medical that I really did have a problem. At medical, they really didn't run very many tests at the group aid station, so they sent me to the Navy hospital at Camp Lejeune, and they also sent me out in town. I wore a Holter monitor for my heart for 30 days. I also had several EEGs done, and EEGs test for seizures because they were thinking, well, maybe she's having seizures. And everything came back fine. All of the blood work that they took of me came back fine. All of the MRIs, CT scans, everything came back just fine. So from a medical standpoint, I was just fine because they couldn't find anything wrong with me. They started telling me that it was all in my head, that I was making myself pass out somehow mentally. So they sent me to mental health. The Marines knew that I wasn't faking it. They knew that it wasn't just all in my head or anything like that. So they started sending a sergeant with me to all of my appointments. And actually my officers went with me whenever I went to the mental health appointment because they knew that that was pretty much bogus, that I wasn't really having that kind of a problem. So eventually I was sent to Bethesda, to the National Naval Medical Center. And while I was there, they gave me a tilt table test. And I did faint on the tilt table test. So they had proof that I really was fainting and that I was not faking it from a medical standpoint, which I was extremely relieved with that. That day, I also saw neurology, and they diagnosed me as having atypical complex migraines. So they decided they were going to start me on beta blockers, and they said the beta blockers would help out with the fainting and the migraines. So I went back to Camp Lejeune with beta blockers and I started taking them. For 103 days, I did not faint. But then all of a sudden, I started fainting all the time. And I had to be sent back to Bethesda. And this time, they told me that the reason why I had a sudden crash and started fainting all the time was because of the beta blockers. So they stopped the beta blockers the times I got there. Well, this time it was a new team of doctors working with me, and they had some doctors come from Johns Hopkins as well. They did another EEG on me, but that came back okay. And so they gave me a stress test. So I fainted on the stress test as well. One of the doctors caught me, that way I wouldn't get hurt on the treadmill. But anyway, like the next day, when the doctors came into my room and told me that I had postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, also known as POTS. POTS is a form of dysautonomia, and POTS is defined as an excessive heart rate. Someone with POTS, whenever they stand up, their heart rate will jump up by about 30 beats per minute or more. And if you have floored POTS, your heart rate will jump up to 120 beats per minute or more. So finally, we knew why I was having the tachycardia, and we knew it wasn't because I was just dehydrated. So finally, I had some answers, and because of that, I was very much relieved. However, there is no cure for POTS. There are treatments for POTS. So the doctors immediately started trying me out on the different medications. Treating POTS is a trial and error thing. I started taking Midodrine, and I was still fainting a good bit. In fact, I was still in a wheelchair. I was wheelchair bound at this point. And we kept on playing around with the different dosages of the Midodrine, but for my body, it was kind of like taking speed. I was wired all of the time. I couldn't sleep. I lost my appetite, and I started losing weight. And I was having a lot of problems because I couldn't sleep at all. I was tired all the time, but I couldn't make myself rest though. So the doctor decided to try me out on Florinef as well. And the Florinef started making me have even more severe migraines. So I started taking Neurontin as a preventive for the migraines. And well, with the combination of the drugs, all the side effects, they just weren't working very well, and I was still passing out all the time, and I was having all sorts of symptoms all the time. Every month I get new symptoms. But then the doctor said that they were doing a study on Mestinon for patients with POTS down in, it was Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was doing the study. So he decided that, he would try to study with me on it. But I couldn't take the Mestinon either. So I've tried all of those drugs, but none of them have helped me. I've tried several other drugs since then, but for me, we haven't come up with a treatment plan to ease my symptoms. Because they couldn't come up with something to help me out, I was medically separated from the Marine Corps. On April 1st, I was medically retired. So I was a 20-year-old medically retired Marine. And I really miss it a lot. But being retired is very boring. It really is. So what I do now with my time is I try to spread dysautonomia awareness, and I go fishing a good bit. I'll go hunting, and I do a lot of stuff on the internet. I do a lot of researching and things like that. But what I really want to do is I want to be a drill instructor. So I'm hoping that within the next 2 years, there will be a significant improvement in all of my symptoms, and I'll be able to go back on active duty and hopefully become a drill instructor, because that would be really awesome.